Hey, we're on Revival, and this is our guide to the press. This is going to be a foundational starting point for you. And of course, as you get more experience in the press, you may find other things that are going to be helpful along the way. But let's start here. All right, as you know, it's a total body movement. So can we explain a little bit what that means as far as total body? Am I just only using my shoulder, or am I using my six pack and my shoulder? What is it?
Mainly. Really important thing that a lot of beginners miss is that pressing is a total body movement. You have to have a good connection from the ground up, and we're going to go through each of these different phases that we describe. Think about the different bodily checkpoints that you're going to have. If you don't focus, let's say, on your stance, you don't have a good connection through your feet. If you're not solid in the middle, you're not going to be able to have a solid press. Really important to realize that it's a total body movement. It's one of those things that you're not going to get right away, but as you do get more experience, as you get deeper into the realm of pressing, you're going to get more and more awareness that this is actually a total body movement. So keep that in mind. Really focus on each of the regions, the bodily regions, for all of the different tips and phases that we're going to outline.
Yeah, and if you're here watching this, and you may be coming from some standard pressing with dumbbells or barbells, something like this, is totally different. So pay close attention and tighten up. First step, you got to get the bell up. And one way to do that is to clean. We have a video on our clean basics, so be sure to check that out if you are unsure to clean. But if you already know how to clean, this is where we're going to start as far as the press goes. And if I have a bad clean, will I have a good press?
Maybe
not.
You hear a lot, a good clean makes a good press. We don't know exactly what that means, but we do know that if you have a bad clean, it can make it harder to have a good press. If your kettlebell's bobbling all over the place, if it doesn't have a good setup on your, let's say, on your forearm or your arm, it's going to be difficult, especially if you're going for reps. So we will go over what you should have in a clean, what are the things you're looking for, to be very specific rather than just saying if this is bad, this is going to be bad. But we do want to start with the clean. Now, he's going to do a right press. I want you to pay attention to his left foot. His left foot is going to step in toward his right leg. So you don't need to step in. If he's comfortable, if that's his pressing stance, or if he can clean from that stance, I'd say that's a little narrow, so you're running a little bit of a risk there.
Yeah.
So if he can clean from right where he's going to press, he doesn't need to step in, but most of the time, people are going to want to step in. The press is an exercise that uses vertical force production. So you want your base to be somewhat underneath the bell. If you get super wide, he's not going to be very strong in this position for a variety of reasons, but mainly because we do want the bell path to be vertical. So he's going to go ahead and do that one more time. Watch the clean and then the step in. So he's going to step toward the side of the bell. So left side is unloaded, right side is loaded. It's easier to move the unloaded side. So go ahead and do that. Balance is going to be key for every one of your kettlebell skills. The way to determine balance is you need to understand where your center of mass is, which is going to be very, very handy as you get into advanced pressing. Not going to go over that today, unfortunately. But if you are going to be balanced, you need to have your center of mass over your base of support. You want to pick a base of support. Your base of support in the press is going to be the area underneath your feet. Now, if he were to put his hand on my shoulder, then I'm going to actually be part of his base of support. He would be able to probably press more weight that way, but I'm not going to help him.
Personal records.
But so the base of support is going to be the area underneath his feet. And as we said before, the kettlebell press is a vertical exercise. So what you're looking to do is put force into the ground and have that force eventually come up and move the bell over your head. So you want to pick a stance that's going to be close enough to your shoulders. However, let's say you're underneath your hips, that might work. Let's get a little narrower. So he could press there, especially when it gets light. As it gets heavier, we'll get into the lean a little bit later. As it gets heavier, he may need to lean. So let's say he's got a really heavy bell and he's leaning to the right, lean toward me. Notice now his shoulder is falling out farther. his weight is actually shifting toward the outside of his base of support. You can see the shoulder is falling down outside of the foot. Now, if he's got a really, really heavy bell and he keeps leaning, he's potentially going to lean over too far and lose balance. So in this case, he may want to move his foot out just a little bit. Now he's supported as he leans. The shoulder is now over the foot. He's better balanced. So your base of support is going to be dictated largely by the press. Now, if go ahead and do a quick clean. Put your feet together, touching. So go ahead and press it. This is light for him. Doesn't really matter. He can rep this out, but it's going to be a little more challenging. His balance is going to be a little more challenged here. So what we're looking for is a stance somewhere generally between hip and shoulder width. And if you do have a tendency to press heavy, you may want to go a little bit wider. Comfort is key, so make sure that you are comfortable. Make sure you are comfortable. The biggest errors we see are too narrow and too wide. So we'll see people in this really wide squat stance. He's trying to push his feet down, and when the feet push down, that's where that force is going. It's going here, okay? It's going here. You see that's actually outside of the kettlebell. Move your feet in. So we want a nice vertical path. The feet push into the floor. That force that the feet push into the floor is actually going to come up through his body, help that kettlebell get overhead. So you want to have feet that are placed in a good position to do that.
Yeah, and it's something that you can definitely play around with, subjective to the size of your belt, the amount of reps, and things like Roger mentioned.
Timing is important in the press, specifically when you get heavier, where we will go into some of the reasons why. How long you wait before you press is going to be a matter of what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to press for a certification, you may have to wait until you get an all clear, go ahead and press. For our purposes, we like to press as soon as possible. There's something called the stretch shortening cycle, and basically what that is as he cleans the bell, it's going to push down, right down on the fist. It's going to pull on the shoulder muscles a little bit. That's the stuff, the muscles, the stuff that he's going to, that's going to help him push the bell overhead. When that gets stretched, it actually fires, it contracts. The faster that happens between the stretch and the time he pushes that kettlebell overhead, the stronger the reaction is going to be. So we don't want to wait for that. We don't want to wait for that to dissipate much. We want him to go as quickly as possible. The really important part of this is as possible. How soon can he possibly go? So if he goes, try to rush the clean and go right. Okay, so he can get away with that. Okay, that's light.
It's pretty light.
It's pretty light. You know, it'll be easy to snatch, push, press, whatever. But if this is heavier, that's not going to work. So what we're looking for timing to be complete, we're looking for a solid clean. We're looking for a solid clean and a solid press. Especially as the bell gets heavier, you're more likely to need to step in and adjust your stance once it gets heavier. So we're looking for a solid step. We're looking for good foot placement. Go ahead and get the bell into that rack position. We also are looking for a solid position where the bell is resting on the forearm. So here it's got a little bit of contact on the forearm, a little bit of contact on the bicep. We'll go over grip a little bit later, but you feel pretty solid here, yes? Mm-hmm. So his stance is intact. The bell has landed. It's ready to go. He's solid through his midsection. All these little boxes are checked. As soon as I see this, we're also looking that this is where his rack normally is. Some places like certifications, for example, will have a height requirement. We'll want your fist to be underneath your chin. If that's one of the things that you need, then make sure you take stock of that. But this looks solid. As soon as he's in this position, I'm happy with him pressing. Now, he can spend 10 seconds getting into this position. I don't recommend it, or he can do it quickly. So let's go ahead and drop the bell and then try to get into this position as soon as possible. So that was fine. I think you could do it faster. You think you could do it faster?
Yep.
I like that. So he hit all the checkpoints. He had his step. He had control of the bell. The bell wasn't moving anymore. He had good contact. He was ready to go. I could see that he was ready to go. He didn't wait too long. He could have waited longer again, but he didn't need to. So when we're talking about timing, remember that as soon as that bell is in the rack, that clock is running. You're on the clock there. So remember, we want that push down of the bell to stretch that stuff out. That's one little added advantage that's going to help you press more or help you press more frequently, more volume, whatever. So you don't want to let that go away. You don't want to waste that advantage. Use it. So press as soon as you possibly can, but make sure you have control. Okay. Do not let all the other fundamentals that we're going to talk about go out the window because you think you got to press as quickly as possible. When I press heavy, let's say if I'm pressing like the 48, that's a lot of weight. So I'm going to go through all of my checkpoints, and that's typically my slowest press. I'll be in the rack maybe for a second or two before I go, whereas the 32, I'm going to clean it and go. But that's going to make sure that all the things I need to have in place during my press are in place. All those boxes are checked. Ideally, I'd like it to go faster, but that's a lot of weight for me, so I can't go any faster safely. So again, as soon as possible. Let's talk a little bit about leg drive. Yes, this is a press. Yes, this is an upper body exercise, but as we started in the beginning, this is a total body movement. Leg drive is something that is going to really bring your pressing strength up. Beginners usually focus on the hand. Okay. And as you get better, your awareness will come down into maybe your elbow and then into your shoulder, then into your midsection. And eventually it's probably going to be down in your feet. You want to understand that exercise or movement in this situation does not happen without the ground. Okay. Without the ground, this does not happen. You need something to push against in order to make this happen. Otherwise it will not work. So we want to make sure that you get that really solid force into the ground. Another thing that you want to get in the habit of when you're pressing and you start with a strong leg drive, you are really checking the box and making sure that you're not going to have a knee dip or, like a push press. It's very common. People will get super excited like, oh, I got a PR, I got this weight up or I got that weight up. And then you go back and look and it's like, whoop.
Yeah, or even like a little hinge at the hips even,
Exactly. So what I would recommend now, go ahead and get into your clean, go ahead and get into your setup. And you don't need to push, but really drive those legs into the ground. Okay, whether you press or not, just make sure you go through the clean, go through the rack, get used to generating your force from the legs first.
Yeah, and a great way to do that I think about is in that clean. When you really drive that clean, you're going to be already in a good position by getting those feet rooted in the ground.
How do you grip the kettlebell? The way that works for most people with most bells is going to be what we show you. There's going to be a difference between cast iron bells and competition bells. How big the bell is, how big your arm is, how long the handle is. There are going to be lots of reasons why you may need to adjust. Don't focus on the times you're going to need to adjust. Focus on trying to get it this way most of the time because it will work. I'm going to have him, I'm going to talk you through this now and then we'll show you. He's going to pick up the bell and he's going to have hold up your hand. He's going to have the bell resting at a 45-degree angle, or he's going to have the handle resting. Not straight across like that, but down at a 45. And actually, let's even do this. This will be a little easier to see. So the handle's not just going to be like this straight at a 45. It'll be down, or straight across like that, it'll be down at a 45. This handle, when you go ahead and grip it, it's going to have more contact between both sides of his hand, and it's going to be able to rest on his wrist really well. So go ahead and get the bell. Go ahead and clean that up.
One quick note, if you want to kind of get yourself into that position quicker, when you grab the bell, try not to grab here. Set yourself up for your press by cheating a little more towards that horn right there. So now you're already in that position.
So you see a 45 here. He's got good contact of the handle right at the base of his pinky. He's got it right at the base of the thumb and the index finger. He's also got good contact between the forearm here. Yeah, generally when you grip toward the inside handle, it's going to set the bell to rotate. Mm-hmm. And where we want the bell, if we look at that path, We want it to come straight from underneath to the outside. So grip the inside handle a bit. We'll set you up for the 45. One of the reasons why we have the bell in this position is to spread the pressure. The greater the surface area over which this pressure is spread, the more comfortable it's probably going to be. When you start pressing, you're probably still going to feel some discomfort on the forearm. It's a very normal thing. But you can minimize it by getting the bell in the right position. The next thing we want to talk about is the forearm. The position should be vertical or near vertical. There are some people who say it should always be vertical. We don't agree with that. The reason why you want it to be vertical for the most part is it's going to be efficient. If you're looking at the shortest distance between here and here, you can keep your arm in closer. If you look at what's going to be the most efficient from here to here, it's going to be straight up, okay? But you can't always do that. We're going to get into a little bit of why in a bit, but there are going to be times when the forearm, especially as you get heavier, may be a little bit off vertical. So maybe not completely here, maybe it's there. We're okay with that. As the bell gets heavier, lifting the elbow or letting the forearm come in a little bit is actually going to bring the kettlebell closer to your midline, especially when these bells get really heavy. It's going to help you balance the bell. So generally, you're going to want to keep the forearm vertical or near vertical, but if it's not perfectly vertical, don't worry about that.
What's this crazy stuff orbit I hear about?
I don't know. I think it's gum.
It's my favorite. They never do those commercials anymore.
The kettlebell press is not going to go straight up and straight down. I do know that some kettlebell sport practitioners want to groove the press straight up and straight down, which makes a lot of sense for their sport. But if you're looking at hardstyle, which is what we're doing here, that is going to be weaker. We're looking to press, especially if we're looking to press heavy. And the angle of the scapula is going to come out. It's not going to sit flat on his back. It's actually going to come forward here. And when he presses, rather than being right here, he's going to be a little bit stronger right here. So as you can see, he's not going to be strongest here. He's going to be stronger there. He's going to push that arm out as it comes up. Okay. So the press is going to come out closer from his body, closer to a 45-degree angle rather than straight in front of him, which means he's got to bring this fist somehow back over here, okay? He's not going to go straight there. He's actually going to, at this point, he's going to bring his arm, let his elbow circle out a little bit. So he's going to push away at a 45, and then he's going to circle that elbow close. Now, the orbit is, we're going to have a few different applications for orbit, but first, if you look at the front of his hand here, if you watch, this whole thing is going to rotate. So go ahead and go through your press path. Okay, so now this was where the front of the hand is, and now it's facing out that way. So that's one way that the bell is going to orbit. The second way, let's go ahead and do both bell paths. Let's keep one bell path really close, and then let's actually use the bell. So this is going to be close. He's still going to have that orbit. The hand still has to rotate, but go ahead and do a couple. He's not letting his body move much. He's staying really stiff, nice and tight. It's a really, really small orbit. In this case, the bell is actually going outside of him. He's basically, if he's the sun, he's making that kettlebell the earth. Okay, that thing is orbiting around him. Now, if he were to do a little bit of a lean, that kettlebell is going to go straight, and he's now orbiting around the bell. And then he's leaning in at the end. So we have two different orbits or two different rotational paths with the bell. Let's do that last one more time.
Okay.
There we go. So generally, you can hang out up there, huh?
That was, feeling good.
Generally, the first type, keeping everything really, really tight. And if you were to freeze frame it, you're probably going to see the elbow outside of the body. This is going to be the weakest position the shoulder is going to be in. You never want to hang out much right at 90, certainly if you don't need to. But this is right about here is going to be your weakest point. You're not going to lean away. This is going to be great for your lighter pressing. This is going to be great for teaching tension and understanding how to feel tight during the press. But as the bell gets heavier, we want that bell to move as little as possible. So he's trying to press that 48. He wants this thing to go straight up. And it's, you see someone who's really, really big walking toward you on the sidewalk, you get out of the way. You let them walk where they want. You close in once they pass. Okay, so that's the second orbit. So again, the first one's really good for tighter bells, learning how to stay tight, and the second one's really good for bigger bells when you're using a little bit of a lean.
Great. And we're not talking styrofoam cups and rap songs. You don't even know that shit.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Lean. Talking about lean, Roger. It's all good. Let's go.
Are you allowed to lean when you press a kettlebell? Some people think no. We think those people are wrong. Yeah. The lean is going to happen at a certain weight. I guess the question is, or questions, what are you training? Are you training the ability to stay completely tight and not be moved? If that's the case, then don't lean. Are you training the ability to press lighter to moderate weight kettlebells? Then you don't need to lean. There will be a point with a heavy kettlebell, especially when you start to approach, let's say, a quarter to half of your body weight, where you were going to want to lean. The short version is, as he picks up a kettlebell, so he's got his anatomical center of mass that most people locate right in this area. Okay, go ahead and pick up the bell. As he adds that mass to his mass, so now there's a combined center of mass, this will shift in the direction of the added mass, and it will be altered by the actual amount of the mass. So this is only a 24. So let's say theoretically his center of mass is here. It only shifts up a little bit. You can see if I drop this straight down, it's still within his base of support. Now, as he presses the bell, the center of mass is moving even more. It goes from here, let's say, up to here. I'm just making this up, but just to illustrate. So as he presses the bell, that center of mass will move. Now, notice go through that path again. So let's pause right about there. Now notice that bell is not over his base of support very much. So he's got this, so he's got this center of mass that is now shifted outside of his body weight. This is fine because it's a 24 kilo, but as he gets heavier, 32, 40, 44, 48, that's gonna be really hard to do. So what he's going to want to do is, as he pushes that bell up, he's going to want to lean. So he's redistributing his mass. That added part of his combined center of mass is going that way. So he's bringing it back over this way to keep his center of mass over his base of support. And go ahead and relax. So if we're really looking at just him as a big ball of mass, so we're looking at his body plus the kettlebell. As this goes that way, if he moves some of this that way, imagine he's divided, in half by a line. If he brings some of this mass back this way, he's bringing more over to that side of the line, and he's going to think of it as a balance. Okay, so imagine this is just like an old school balance scale. This is really going to tip that way, which technically would do that. But for illustration purposes, it's going to go like that, and he's going to want to bring this over this way to keep it in balance. Okay, so that's what the lean is all about. If you don't lean when the bell gets too heavy, you are going to fall over. So you have a choice to make. If you don't want to lean, don't press heavy. At a certain point, though, that bell is going to get too heavy. His center of mass is going to go too far outside of his base of support. That's the definition of balance, base of support, keeping the center of mass over the base of support. So as his center of mass goes outside of his base of support, he can either fall, not press a heavy bell, or lean back in toward the middle. So where we come down with the lean, minimize it. You can offset the lean by getting stronger. There's nothing wrong with it and saying, hey, I just pressed the 48. Didn't look pretty. I probably leaned a little too much, but it still went up. As I get better at this, I do want to minimize that lean. Nothing wrong with that. but understand why you're leaning and lean when it's appropriate. The wedge is a technique used to push you in between the kettlebell and the ground. We've indicated that the ground is an important thing for pressing. Obviously, so is the kettlebell. Without it, press doesn't really make a lot of sense. Certainly not impressive.
Raising your hand.
Unless you have very, very big hands. 48 kilo hands.
Yeah, they're heavy.
So the wedge is talked about in two ways, and often people don't differentiate. They talk about one wedge, but again, I've heard this concept used in two different ways. One is learning the idea of driving your legs into the ground to create force, and rather than thinking about, don't focus on your hand, don't focus on your elbow, don't focus on your shoulder, focus on moving your body in between the kettlebell. It might sound silly, the kettlebell on the ground rather. It might sound silly, but as you get better and you learn how to do this, it will make a lot more sense. So that is one aspect of the wedge. Another aspect of the wedge. Let's go ahead and do. So this is a drill we use. It's actually called the sticky press. So as you press up, he's going to get to a point right around his eyes where he's kind of, usually there's a sticking point, and as soon as he clears, he's leaning away a little bit. As soon as he clears that bell over his head, he's going to start to wedge underneath it. So this is the second application I've seen as it's applied to the lean. So go ahead and do that again. As he's coming up, he's going to get past that sticking point and then wedge underneath. Really, really key when you're doing this, when he leans away, if he leans too far away or if he leans back, he's not going to be able to push under here. That press is probably going to fail. So when you lean, it shouldn't be too far. And when you're wedging, you want to stay nice and tight because you're using your body to get underneath that kettlebell. So those are the two descriptions and two applications of the wedge. So one is actually thinking about wedging you between the ground and the kettlebell, using the legs. Okay. The other one is as you get stuck, using your body as a wedge to move between the kettlebell and the ground. So second one's a little more active. It involves the lean. We need to talk about tension. Tension is the thing that's going to keep the press from crumbling, especially when it gets heavy. How are you going to create tension? There are some different techniques. We're not going to go into all of them in detail, but the basic idea of tension is you're going to squeeze things. You're going to start at the ground. You're going to make sure that you have nice high arches, that your feet are not sinking into the ground to a degree that you're actually sinking in. Okay. And rather than high arches, that's probably a bad description. We just want a solid connection. There are some people who recommend screwing the feet into the ground. I don't like that because I don't know what condition your feet are in. I could actually be cueing you to get weaker, and I don't want to do that. So some people will say screw your feet into the ground. You can try that. I don't cue that. All I cue is make sure that you've got a solid connection between the base of the big toe, the little toe, and the heel. Make sure that connection is strong there. You can lift the kneecaps and squeeze the quads. Okay, squeeze the glutes. You can squeeze the abs as you're going up, and you've got that kettlebell in your hand. It's in that hand. Okay. You can actually squeeze. You can actually squeeze the handle, and go ahead and put those all together. He can also squeeze this hand, this off arm, as he goes overhead. Now, one other really important tension technique is breathing. So go ahead and relax. What he's going to do before he does that clean, he doesn't want to be soft in the midsection. So what he's going to do is he's going to inhale into his strong abs, strong midsection. He's going to clean the bell. And then as he begins the press, he's going to start to let a little air out. So what that's going to do is it's going to help alleviate some of the pressure as he's going up, probably make him less likely to pass out. You do not need to do this. You probably are going to be fine holding your breath the whole time. But what we're looking for is as he's exhaling, he's actually contracting his abs. So his abs are contracting against the air that he has in here. It's making him stronger. So if we go through feet, quads, glutes, abs, kettlebell side, Off arm side, everything's squeezed. He gets a good breath. Then he's going to be nice and tense. We're looking again to channel force from the ground all the way up into the kettlebell. That's a big distance. So if stuff is loose and noodly, he's not going to really get a lot of force from the ground. It might go into the ground, but then it's not going to go anywhere. Okay.
Another thing good to point out is you don't necessarily need to use your maximum tension for every single press that you have. Use, similar to what we mentioned earlier, use with what we mentioned with timing is use as much as needed for that particular rep or press or whatever it is. A lighter bell, you may not need it as much if you're repping out until the end. A heavier bell, you may want to really bear down before you begin that press and give yourself the best chance.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So you've successfully pressed your kettlebell. Now what do you do? So we established that he has held his breath. The bell is up. He's gone ahead and he's probably exhaled at that point. Okay, so that's all out. Probably needs to get a little more air in. Okay, what are you going to do as you're inhaling?
I'm going to bring this bell down.
Let's see it.
Okay.
Push again. So you can see as he's pulling the bell down actively, he's stretching the stuff that's helping him press. All that stuff from his shoulder and his arm is being stretched. It's going to help him go back the other way. He's inhaling and pressurizing his midsection as he pulls down, and he's letting some of that tension out. He's not holding his breath. The pull down is really important when you want to go for multiple presses. If you're working, if you're working to get your press up, you're going to do a lot of work in that 3 to 5 rep range. And if you can't get this part down, it's going to be really, really tricky. You don't want to just collapse and let that drop. You're going to lose control. So he's making sure that he uses his breath and all of his tension. So he's got a solid foundation to press into the next rep.
All right, you made it this far, so you've seen it all. Well, at least all to start with. Let's go ahead and put it all together so you can understand what it looks like when you are now doing your press, hitting all the check marks that we presented along the way. So I'm gonna start with my clean and step. Now my base support feels good. I got my leg driving into the ground. I'm starting to create the tension, and I'm gonna go ahead and press up and pull it back down. Simple as that. There's a lot to it. Give it a shot. And for a better reference, just so you can see it all, we're gonna show you the press master himself, Coach Roger Parks. Do a whole bunch of them. Well, there you have it. That's our guide to pressing. There's a lot of intricacies to this, but this is a great place to start. So go back through, practice this, watch it, practice, watch it, practice, watch it,
Practice.
watch it. Yeah, practice. And refer. And as you get higher in your skills, you'll need to know more, and we're here for you there too. So leave us any questions you have in the comment section below or through any social media. And as always, stay strong.